you can add or remove us.
Yeah. So reality checks, do they work or do they not work? Today, two teams are going to debate their opinion, and in the end, the audience is going to decide a winner. So each team will have the same amount of time to present their argument and take turns interrogating each other, and then we'll take questions after. I'll be the judge / moderator. I'll make sure that everything's fair so we can get to the bottom of this seemingly controversial subject. The rules are as follows. Time is limited, so each will have 2 minutes and as a warning, and then a 30-second warning before your time is up. Team Nightowl will begin by arguing for reality checks with the 5-minute opening statement. And then Team Skyfall will give his opening statements, arguing for critical state tests. And there will be no interruptions. I will be keeping track of everything. And then we'll take questions at the end. So if anybody is watching on any of the platforms, you can drop your comments. Go ahead and share and like right now. So we can get people in here and get some good questions for the end, and just drop them as we go. And then at the end, we'll have closing statements from both teams, and then we all vote. So the people get to decide. One person will walk away as the leader today, but then we're going to be able to vote for a whole week, and then there will be a champion. So subscribe to the Lucid Dream Initiative YouTube channel as well, because we're trying to be able to go live on there. And you can also sign up on our website for our monthly newsletter. We already released the first one. It was awesome. So yeah, follow along. So welcome. And welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for joining me. And then today, we're going to start with opening statements. We'll begin with Night Owl's opening statement. And then this is what the bell is going to sound like as your warning to let you know that you have 2 minutes left and then 5 minutes left. So, Night Owl, you may begin. I'm going to set the timer now.
Are you dreaming? Don't answer that. Think about it for a moment while I speak. How do you know? Are you dreaming is a profound question that embodies the spirit of lucid dreaming and critical thinking. Why do I call it reality checks? Well, reality is subjective. Much like language that evolves over time, we tend to get caught up in the terminology of a concept rather than the technique. Reality checks outside of the context of lucid dreaming refer to something which shows you that the real situation is different from what you believed or hoped, according to the Britannica Dictionary. And it is no different for lucidity practice. So, do they work? Yes, if done correctly. Reality checks accomplish 3 things. They increase critical thinking by bringing your dreams to life. So many practices are focused on what you do in the evening just before bed or while sleeping. Ironically, Night Owl is a bit of an early bird and advocates for daytime practices just as much, if not more, than what you do at night. By questioning your surroundings, increasing mindful awareness, and imagining, am I dreaming? You can create a strong foundation for lucidity. Reality checks engage the active imagination through visualization. Rather than rushing through with it, take time to wonder, what would it be like if it were a dream? Don't take my word for it. Check, double check, and be sure of it yourself. If you don't really consider the possibilities, you are mindlessly performing a task that can actually hinder your progress. Because let's be honest, how many times do you check your phone in a day? And how many times do you dream about your phone? The difference is doing it with intention and logic. The laws of physics and waking reality will not bend to your will, but the reality you experience in the dream world will. Reality checks increase your ability to control the dream through becoming more critically aware, practicing active imagination, and trying to make something magical happen. Your beliefs will carry over into the dream state. So let me finish by saying this. Are you sure you aren't dreaming? You should be, because we are awake and we're sharing this dream we call reality right now. I am sure of it. Let me just check it. But again, I could be an NPC trying to lull you back to sleep. Find out for yourself and ground yourself in reality, because dissociation is a dangerous mentality, and I never want people to use this practice for an escape. Reality checks make you more mindful of your experiences, whether you are in waking life or the dream world.
Thank you, Night Owl. That was a great opening statement. And now we will hear the opposing side's opening statement. Skyfall, you will have 5 minutes. and you may begin now.
Thank you, Madam Chief Justice, Your Honor, and may it please the court. Well, we're not exactly in a court of law here today, but we are discussing and debating and arguing for our positions on critical state tests. And I specifically use the term critical state test over reality check for a few reasons. One, reality check implies that there's something about reality itself that may be different, or that reality itself is somehow changed in a way, or some different thing about reality. There is an objective waking reality that we can and do experience. There are objective laws that do follow in waking reality, and you can also say that waking reality and dreaming are still both reality in a sense. So reality itself isn't changing in the sense that you're still following laws of reality in a sense through your own mind and how your mind works. You're in a different state. A big proponent of the term critical state test, or just state test or reality test in general, is actually Dr. Stephen LaBerge, and he makes a point as to why we use the term state test or reality test rather than reality check. Because what you're really doing is examining the state that you're in, and you're actively testing it. Now, why do I use the term critical state test? Because it implies why and how you go about doing a state test. A mindless state test, as we're talking, as Nightowl was just saying, is a useless state test. If you're not actively engaged, if you're not critically aware, if you're not critically thinking and examining what you're doing, and you're just doing a mindless and autopilot action, that's not going to transfer into awareness and into lucidity. And so critical state tests can be useful. And I see a critical state test as like training wheels on a bike. And when you're just starting to ride a bike, if you go out and you're a young kid and you're riding your bike on two wheels and you're not very good at it, you're probably going to fall over, you're going to wipe out. You're not really good at balancing it. And those training wheels kind of help you get the idea. They help you kind of feel your way through it. They help you balance and learn how to balance as you're starting to ride that bike, keep you from falling over as you begin, and give you that sort of guardrail to kind of practice and hone your skill. And then once you have that skill, and once you've done that, you don't really need that supplement, that supplementary aid. You don't need it anymore because you're proficient with that skill. And the same goes with critical state tests. I'd note that they are a supplementary practice. They're not a primary or chief practice. They're not a standalone practice. They're not something that is done in absentia, because just doing those by themselves, there are actually studies, and I point to the 2021 International Lucid Dreaming Study that actually tested, mild and wake back to bed, SLD, wake back to bed, combining mild and SLD. And they also combined those with critical state tests and reality tests, as the term RT is used in most scientific studies. And so they determined that reality tests didn't really have too much of an effect on the overall results, especially in the short term. They can be useful for someone who is learning to kind of get an idea of what it's like to be critical, but they're not like the primary method, and they're not something to be done by themselves. And once you get to a point where you're able to get lucid, especially frequently, you can gain confidence in your lucidity, and you don't need that confirmation measure to know that you're lucid anymore. I yield the rest of my time to the chair.
Thank you, Skyfall. That was a great opening statement. This is getting very interesting. And now we are going to dive deeper into the evidence of both sides. And we will see what each of them has to say in order to explain their stance. So you will each have 5 minutes again, and then we'll take questions at the end from the opposing team and then from the audience and the viewers. So, Nightowl, you may begin your 5 minutes now.
Thank you, Your Honor. Let me just take a page out of my opponent's playbook here and say that I really appreciate you just taking the time to facilitate this conversation. It really goes a long way to making sure that we fight fair here today. And thank you to Skyfall for being here as well, and anybody else who's watching. But I really want to get into some evidence now. And this is where the anecdotal reports end, right? So I'm going to share 5 reasons that back up reality checks and their effectiveness. So let me summarize the 5 things. Okay, so first and foremost, there is a very high awareness and familiarity with the concept of reality checks, or if you want to call them critical state tests, critical questions. They embody the same essence for me personally. So I'm going to say most people know about reality checks, and even outside of the context of lucid dreaming, what are reality checks? They essentially make you take a step back and challenge your assumptions, right? So the second point is versatility and adaptability. Then I wanted to talk about empirical support and their efficacy and how that ties into mindfulness and lucid dreaming. Finally, grounding and avoiding dissociation. Those are my 5 main points for backing up reality checks and their effectiveness. So let's dive into it. High awareness and familiarity. Stumbry's meta-analysis reveals that reality checks are the most commonly known technique among individuals practicing lucid dreaming. This indicates a high level of awareness and familiarity with the concept of reality checks within the lucid dreaming community. The widespread recognition of reality checks suggests that they are widely regarded as a fundamental and accessible practice for inducing lucid dreams. I'm arguing that most people just aren't doing them correctly. Number 2, versatility and adaptability. Reality checks offer a versatile and adaptable approach to lucid dreaming induction. Unlike other techniques that may require specific conditions or circumstances, reality checks can be performed at any time in any situation. This flexibility allows individuals to incorporate reality checks seamlessly into their daily routines, increasing the likelihood of success and inducing lucid dreams. Number 3, empirical support and efficacy. Empirical research supports the efficacy of reality checks in promoting lucid dreaming. Stumbry's meta-analysis, along with other studies in the field, demonstrate a positive correlation between the consistent practice of reality checks and the frequency of lucid dreaming experiences. By regularly questioning the nature of reality and conducting reality checks throughout the day, individuals can cultivate a heightened state of self-awareness and increase their chances of achieving lucidity during sleep. Number 4, mindfulness and lucid dreaming. Mindfulness, defined as non-reactive, present-centered awareness, shares similarities with the practice of lucid dreaming. While mindfulness emphasizes being fully present in the moment without judgment, lucid dreaming involves being aware that one is in a dream with the potential ability to control aspects of the dream. Both practices cultivate a heightened sense of self-awareness and present, focused attention. Incorporating mindfulness practices such as reality checks into daily routines can enhance lucid dreaming induction by promoting greater mindfulness and self-awareness during sleep. And lastly, number 5, grounding and avoiding dissociation. Grounding techniques such as the 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch method are commonly used to reduce anxiety and prevent dissociation. Similarly, incorporating reality checks into daily routines serves as a form of grounding in the context of lucid dreaming. By regularly questioning the nature of reality and engaging in reality checks, individuals maintain a connection to their waking experiences and avoid dangerous dissociation during lucid dreaming and waking life. This grounding effect enhances the safety and psychological well-being of individuals practicing lucid dreaming, ensuring a balanced and healthy approach to exploring the dream world. In conclusion, reality checks emerge as a fundamental technique for inducing lucid dreams, supported by empirical evidence and recognized for their versatility and adaptability. When combined with mindfulness practices and grounded in reality checks promote greater self-awareness and present-focused attention, increasing the likelihood of achieving lucidity during sleep while minimizing the risk of dissociation and promoting psychological well-being. Thank you. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you you have 30 seconds left, so that was good timing. Okay, sounds great. That was some great evidence presented by Nightowl's team. And now we will hear from Skyfall. You will have 5 minutes to present your argument. You may begin now.
So basically, reality tests or critical state tests in this case, there is actual evidence that demonstrates a lack of effectiveness when particularly compared to other techniques. Now, I don't argue that they should never be done in a sense, but my main point in this case is that one, they should not be a standalone method, so be done by themselves in absentia, so done without any other techniques or as a standalone method. And two, that they're not actually required for lucidity. And so there is some good evidence to back this, that you don't actually need state tests to do this. Now, there's an international lucid dreaming study in, let me see if I got the year here, 2020 International Lucid Dreaming Study that actually studied reality tests, mild to monoconduction lucid dreams, senses-initiated lucid dream, SSILD, and combinations of them. And so in the general discussion, when they've broken down the statistics, Here's what the author had to say about reality tests or state tests. No significant correlations were observed between number of reality tests performed each day and lucid dreaming incidents. This replicates the lack of significant correlations in the reality test only and the reality test plus wake back to bed plus mild groups of the NALDIS, which I believe is National Australian Lucid Dreaming Induction Study, and the lack of correlation reported by Conkley and Burke, 2019. There was no significant difference in lucid dreaming rate between the mild plus wake back to bed groups that did and did not perform reality tests during the day. These findings are consistent with the, again, National Australian Lucid Dream Induction Study and studies by LaBerge in 1988 and Tate's 2011, in which reality test was ineffective. It remains possible that reality tests are effective over longer periods of time, as found for 3 weeks in studies by Purcell et al. 1986 and Purcell 1988, and 8 weeks in a study by Schlaggees 1992. These participants claimed that performing RT was burdensome and difficult to remember. This may reduce motivation and compliance with more effective techniques when practiced in combination. Lucid dream induction studies should avoid daytime RT unless this technique, so daytime reality testing, unless this technique is of specific interest. The present author believes that reality tests is still a valuable technique. Okay, so it can be useful. However, it's not necessary. It's not actually required. And it's something that can actually be detrimental. And there are some examples. And so I can give some personal examples. Relying on reality tests or state tests during dreams can actually lead to questioning lucidity after you already know that you're dreaming. And I experienced this early on in my career, constantly questioning even though you already know and not being confident in your own lucidity. And recognizing a dream sign, this is something Dr. Kristen Lamarca points out with her discussion on reality tests. If you can recognize dream signs, you can realize that you're dreaming, but then you go to perform a state test because you think you have to use state tests to perform state tests to get lucid, and you get a failing state test result, and you therefore do not become lucid. State tests can fail. They can be useful for beginners, but they are not a standalone practice, and they are not something that is necessary or something that has to be done. They're just something that can be done. And I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you very much, Skyfall. You had some very important points there. So now I will quickly, we will go into questions. But first, I will quickly give a short summary of some of the main points here, and then you will each be able to ask each other questions. So we had Skyfall presented his information, which you all just heard, and there was a lot of good points there. He also provided some evidence to show that reality checks haven't always been proven to be effective in those studies. However, he did say that one thing that I wrote down that I noticed that stood out to me was the number of reality checks was not correlated with an increase in lucid dreaming. And they have been known for many people to be burdensome and difficult, and there is a lot of mindset schemas involved in making you think that you need them to lucid dream, which is not true. They don't need to be a standalone method. Oops, that was the timer. So one of his main points were that it is not designed to be a standalone method, although it can help. Nightowl take his argument a little bit further to show how important and helpful reality checks can be when done correctly. And I should say critical state test, because that was a big thing in Skyfall's argument, was that that term is important to use. And Nightowl also shared studies in which they were proven to be effective. So we have balancing sides here. And we will now allow time for questions. So we can begin with Skyfall. Do you have any questions for Nightowl?
I do. And so in your lucid dreaming practice, have you ever had an instance where a state test has failed on you in a dream after you were already questioning? And have you ever, have you worked and trained yourself at all in determining that, you being able to recognize a dream sign without the need of doing a state test? Have you found yourself over time being able to recognize dream signs, or have you continued to rely on state tests even though you are getting lucid or recognizing dream signs?
Yes, I have. So I will say reality checks are a cornerstone of my current practice, even after experiencing hundreds of lucid dreams. I don't have the exact number because my practice has been on and off for so much time. But I will say that I continue to perform them for all the reasons I mentioned before. In my experience, reality checks, um, they can be demotivating if you get complacent. And the adaptability I mentioned before is meant to combat this. So if you always check your hand and you're just going, yep, my hands look normal. Yep, 5 fingers. Yep, they're good. Five, it's not going to do you any good. One time when I was dreaming, I actually checked my hands because that's my favorite test. And I actually felt my hands raising to my face, and I had no arms, let alone hands or fingers. And it really kind of frightened me to become disembodied. It took me a moment to settle down and to relax back into the moment. But let me just say that you do not need reality checks to realize that you're dreaming. What they do is confirm the physical nature of the reality you're in. I heard you mention earlier that critical state tests are meant to determine a difference in reality because waking life or the dream world, which reality are you in? But really, how do you define reality, right? It's all subjective. So in my defense, I would say that the way you combat reality checks from breaking down and not working is quality over quantity, right? The number of reality checks aren't correlated to its effectiveness, because you could do one really good reality check that makes you think, and that impression will stick with you throughout your day.
Okay, great. Thank you for the answer. Skyfall, do you have any other questions at this time?
Oh, let me see. Have you ever been in a situation where you've, performed, say, multiple state tests in a dream, and you found yourself actually losing confidence in your own ability to be lucid because you were performing multiple state tests? Have you ever been in a situation like that where maybe you were anxious or maybe you were concerned about whether or not you were dreaming, and you drove yourself to kind of perform multiple state tests and to confirm even when there were obvious dream signs?
Um, not necessarily. I will humor you in saying that if you actually read our last newsletter, I included a story about the light bulb and how I walked into my room, I flicked the light switch. I actually wasn't conducting a reality check intentionally. There was nothing that prompted me to think something is weird. I'm not in the waking world. I walked into the room and I flicked the light switch, much like I would anytime I walk into a dark room and I flick a light switch. The difference is in waking life, now when I walk into a room and I flick a light switch, I stop. I take a moment to reflect on what I was doing. I'm more mindful. I'm aware of where I'm at and what I intend to do in this new location. And that's exactly what followed me into the dream. It wasn't the criticality that prompted the reality check. The reality check prompted the criticality, because when I flicked the light switch in the dream, nothing happened. It remained dark. And to address what I really think you're saying here, Skyfall, is do reality checks, do they make you second guess your critical thinking? And it's normal. It's completely rational to confabulate, to justify all the crazy things that are happening within a dream because that critical part of your brain isn't as active as it is during the day. But in this case, it actually connected my experience to waking reality. I thought to myself, because of all the practice I was putting in during the day, wow, why didn't that light turn on? I just changed this light bulb. It should have worked. I still didn't realize I was dreaming. Instead, I continued to rationalize by climbing on my bed and attempting to change the light bulb a second time, or what I thought was the second time, within 24 hours. I mean, how often do you really have to change a light bulb, right? This is a cheap product. And what happened next really shocked me. I reached up, and as I made contact with the light bulb, the lights turned on. Again, I continued to rationalize, doubling down on my thought pattern. Maybe it was just loose and I had to tighten it, right? But what happened next, I didn't expect. When I got down from the bed, all of the people who were in my house, it seemed like all of the people in the world had seemingly disappeared. And through the process of thinking critically, I determined I was dreaming. I hope that answers your question.
It does. I only have one further question, Your Honor. So, because reality tests, I think we both can agree that reality tests, state tests can be a useful practice. But do you think that they are a standalone practice and that people should be practicing them without doing any induction methods, which is a common thing that is seen on YouTube and in other places, where people are just recommending people to do journaling and state testing without any other practices? Is that something that you yourself advise?
No. Sorry, I got a little close there. No. And I wish in the context of this debate, I could just say yes, right? But really, the best technique is combining techniques, customizing your practice, exploring other people's experiences, and experimenting with what works for you. But let's just, let's put that disclaimer out there, and then I'm going to argue against what I just said. You can keep a dream journal and do reality checks and achieve lucidity. I know because I've done it. If we're going to cite an anecdotal report, I'm not going to mention anybody else except myself. And what I've found online, because I see this every day, do reality checks, keep a dream journal, stay consistent. You can do it. It doesn't speak to the nature of the technique, right? If reality checks aren't a technique in and of themselves, what is the process or the method for conducting one properly? We haven't talked about that at all. And I really would like to, when it's my turn for questioning, I'm going to give you some extra time to think in my response here. I want you to think about, how do you properly conduct a reality check? Because I don't think many people know. Let me pull up my my little cheat sheet here. From the Stumbry's meta-analysis that I mentioned earlier, the most commonly known technique in this study, with it looks like 1,400 people, specifically said that they knew of reality checks or critical questions. And that combined percentage of the total participants was roughly 90%. 90% of the participants knew about reality checks or critical questions. That's astonishing to me. And I'd be very interested to know how critical state tests were defined in the context of this study, and the recommended practice involved. Me personally, I'll tell you right now, when I do a reality check, I not only practice mindfulness and critical thinking, but I'm actually actively engaging with my imagination. I'm envisioning what this would be like if I were dreaming. And that's why I advocate for grounding and safety more than anything, because so many people use this as a way to escape reality, when truly it should be a way to determine which reality you are in, and then you can continue with the best course of action.
Awesome. So, do you have any questions, Nightowl, now for Skyfall?
Yes, of course. Let me start by asking you, how do you define reality, Ryan?
Well, reality is, in this case, there is basically a set of experience that is typically defined by some type of laws. In this case, while we're awake, it's the laws of physics, nature, biology, science, kind of the laws of how the universe works. While we're asleep, we're still kind of defined by those laws. It's just we're inside our own brain, where we don't have access to external data, but biology and chemistry still govern us, and so that still influences what we kind of see as reality. And so there's the personal experience component combined with the objective nature of actual things that do exist apart from ourselves, and so all of that is part of reality.
Wonderful. Just to expound on that idea. The objective nature that connects our reality, right? That's what we're referring to. I would argue that there is an objective. There are objective elements to lucid dreaming. For example, I define lucid dreaming on a scale with 3 elements. There's clarity, which sort of determines the vividness of a dream. There's consciousnness, which is a scale of your lucidity or awareness. And then there's control, which is your ability to manipulate your environment. And obviously, those 3 C's are going to be different whether you're awake or you're asleep. However, it is fair to say that you can control a dream, right? Lucidity is not inherently control, but it is possible to manipulate your dream, correct?
It is possible if it is possible to do that. In fact, you do technically control your dreams, consciously or unconsciously based on basically how you're responding or acting or reacting in various situations and how you're perceiving a situation. You are actively controlling your dreams. I will say, as when you're talked about how do you actually perform a state test, to do it properly, it involves being aware of what you're experiencing, being aware of what you're doing, examining your environment for any potential dream signs, critically questioning whether or not you're actually dreaming, and then possibly performing some type of test, either a physical test or a mental test, to examine and try to answer that question, which is either a yes, you are dreaming, or no, I don't think I am, because any state test can actually fail. Now, getting into what you were talking about with popularity, because I do want to respond to that, because you actually talked about that for a good bit, or a little bit. In just because something is popular doesn't mean that it's the most effective or extremely effective. It just means that it's something that has been popularized. And in fact, the term reality check is a good example of that, because it was the term that was misquoted and basically kind of misrepresented and made popular in that way. And so it doesn't mean it's correct because it is popular. So I just wanted to note that as well. But for people, I've come across a lot of examples of people who have practiced just state testing and journaling, and then they're wondering months down the road, sometimes years down the road, why am I not lucid dreaming? I'm doing state tests, and I'm doing, reality checks or, state tests and journaling, but I'm not getting lucid. And that's kind of like almost the bare minimum in a sense of terms of practice, because it is kind of like that training wheel, that supplementary practice, but it has been demonstrated to, not be as effective just by itself. And so it does help to actually have a routine and to do it as part of a routine and not just by itself.
Okay, I have one last question, if that's okay, Judge.
Mhm.
Okay, great. So I do want to talk a little bit about the evidence that you cited earlier in your opening statement. You mentioned Aspie's study, which goes into analysis of multiple techniques and determines reality checks to be ineffective as a standalone method. So I'd like to ask you if you're familiar with Aspie's sampling method, how they determined who would participate in their study, as well as their experience with lucid dreaming.
Right. Well, let me go dig that up, because they did have some parameters in here. Got to dig that PDF up again. It's about a
Take your
20 page.
time. Yep, it's
About a
okay. I was just going
20-page
to
document.
elaborate a little bit on this
So,
idea. So if you're ready, by all means, go ahead.
So they had 190 participants who completed the final sample. They started with 843. They ended with 190. This was an online study, so they were doing questionnaires online. They were trying to include as many people as possible. Actually, hold on. Final sample had 190 males. Hold on. It was 355 completed week 2, so 355 total. 190 females, 162 males. That's how it broke down. All right. So they give some age statistics. All right. So 54% reported prior experience with lucid dream induction techniques. Only 6%, only 6 people out of 355, 1.7%, have participated in prior lucid dreaming research. participants reported mean 1.1 lucid dreams in the month prior to commencing the study. So it looks like they were seeking out people who had some experience to try to test effectiveness of techniques. So they weren't going for pure beginners. They wanted to see how quickly they could get people to gain lucidity. So it seems they broadcasted it to social media, Facebook, social media, email lists, other internet sources. Let's see. Of course, excluding people who are diagnosed with sleep disorders. Highly stressful trauma. So they had various suffer from persistent insomnia. So they have various disqualifying factors, and of course minors. All right. Anyway, so they had logbooks, materials, questionnaire, instructions for techniques. Okay. Let's see. All right.
So if I could just respond to that, I'm not too familiar with the study. I was hoping you could provide some more information. I appreciate you looking that up for me.
It is very long. So
yeah, no doubt.
There's a lot of stats in here too.
My concern is the sampling method, because with so many lucid dreaming studies, obviously this is a niche field and it's hard to find, people to participate, especially people who haven't had any exposure previously. And my concern is that it may be more effective for beginners who are new to the practice, and hence the popularity, familiarity aspect. And also as you get deeper into your practice, to be able to distinguish whether you're awake or asleep, because I find that dissociation is a very dangerous mentality, and want to clearly advocate for that as a tool to ground yourself in the present moment.
Before my time completely runs out, I want to push back a little bit on that, because the point of being able to attain lucidity is to actually be able to determine that difference between waking and dreaming, and to have a stronger connection. And in fact, as you get deeper into your practice, that's when you should be using state tests less, because you're able to recognize dream signs more readily and more easily, and you're able to know just by the context of what you experienced that you are dreaming without actually having to check, as long as you are kind of maintaining that level of practice. You don't actually need state tests at that point when you are getting deeper into your practice. This is different from people who actually do have dissociative symptoms and dissociative issues. That is a whole separate category. But talking about the average person normal, I would say normal average person with straightforward, without mental health concerns, that it is when you're getting lucid and you're attaining lucidity, you're recognizing dream signs, you're going to be able to tell more easily when you're in a dream versus when you're awake, and have less reality confusion as a result of that.
Well, this is where the debate over terminology extends far beyond just this one concept, because dream signs for me are not just things that make you realize you're dreaming. They're actually recurring themes and patterns that are specific to you. And so while, it's worth maybe debating another time, for me, my high-level lucid dreams are extremely mundane and lifelike. So the experiences feel very real in the moment, and they look real. They sound real. They taste real. State taste. Excuse me. But the point is, the language does matter so that we can ensure we're talking about the same thing. And to summarize my last question, I fear that Aspie's study may have had an inherent bias in his sampling method. Perhaps he recruited, people who were familiar with his work, and there was some sort of observer bias. But more importantly, their experience level matters. If these are people who only practice lucid dreaming and have done so for any substantial amount of time, then they may inherently be biased against reality checks. And furthermore, you mentioned 1% of them had attained lucidity in the last month, which is not consistent with the current research, which shows 20% of the general population.
You're misquoting. I said 1% of them had. The mean was 1.1 lucid dreams in the month over the whole study. That was the mean. And the 1% was people who had participated in prior lucid dreaming research.
Gotcha.
So you're misquoting those stats.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Because according to current research, it's closer to 20% of people can attain lucidity within a month. Obviously, dream research is hard to come by, and there's plenty to be done in this field still. So I am all about, surveys and self-reporting, but clearly they have their own inherent bias. So that's the last thing I'll say about that.
Yeah, I could say the same thing about the one that you're talking about too, and just about the popularity of something maybe having an innate bias as well. So just as a response, but yeah. Anyway, this has been fun. I've enjoyed this. It's been awesome. I've got some people from Europe who are staying up late on bless them. Green, you're awesome by the way. Staying up late to watch this. You guys rule.
That's awesome. Thank you all for the questions. Now, while we wait for some people to drop any questions that they have in the chat and in the comments, if you have any, now's the time to drop it, and we will take those questions after both of you will give a 2-minute closing statement. 2 to 3 minutes. I'm not going to be too harsh on it, but who wants to go first? Nightowl, do you want to go first?
Actually, I would motion to take audience questions first. Perhaps that can help us formulate our conclusions.
I second.
Okay. So let's see. Sounds good. We will take questions from the StreamYard audience. So we have Crystal and Martin in here. I don't know if Crystal has a question, but I know Martin said he does, so I will add him to the stage for his question. Hey, Martin, how's it going?
Yeah, all good. Am I crystal clear?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, cool. So I just wonder, what are your perspectives on traditional compared to Western methods? Because in cultures like they have been doing practices like the ancient Toltecs, the ancient Tibetans, the ancient Xhosa shamans for ages, and just Western science caught up in 1975. So, I mean, a lot of the urban culture around lucid dreaming is very new compared with these ancient kind of techniques that have been tried and tested over time. So, what are your perspectives on that?
Who goes first?
You do.
Okay, great. Martin, thank you so much for being here. Awesome to see you, man. Your shirt and the entire backdrop is amazing. I would love to just like zoom in on any one thing I can see behind you. But that's the extent of my flattery. Let me get back to your question. It's so worth mentioning that there are thousands of years of cultural experience with this phenomenon. And I would argue that it's a lot more relevant than what we've done in the last 50 years. So my limited understanding, which I'm still learning more every day, is that some cultures do believe that this life we're experiencing now, even amongst ourselves here, online and in person around me, is a dream. That everything is a dream. That when we close our eyes and fall asleep, we're still experiencing a dream without the limits of physical reality. And so I do find a lot of value and merit in that belief because it challenges your assumptions. It makes you more playful in the way you interact with people around you and your environment, because you realize everything is a projection of yourself personally. You can find yourself in the other, and ultimately we are one. So that's the best way I know how to answer that.
Right.
Awesome. Thank you. Skyfall, do you have an answer as
I
well?
will say you were getting a bit Hegelian there at the end. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Hegel, but we had to discuss Hegel in a class that I'm taking at school, and that's part of it, like the self and recognizing the other as part of the self in that sentence. That's Hegelian philosophy, by the way. Not sure if you're familiar with Hegel or not, but I will say that there are values in those traditions, and I do think science is catching up. I do think we are learning more and more as we catch up and as we get to know more. And my whole idea and understanding of science is that the more we learn, the more questions we have, and it's almost an infinite cycle of knowledge begetting questions, begetting knowledge, begetting questions. And so I think we're going to just discover more levels of complexity and understanding as we gain more knowledge. So I love the way that things are going forward. I do like to have kind of verifiable understanding. That's the Western in me. But I do think that we are, learning more about the brain. We are learning more about how all this stuff works, which is a lot of fun. Now, real quick, I just wanted to note that Green on my channel, guy from Europe, is asking a question. Outside of this debate, what are your opinions on reality checks or critical state tests? I can answer just for me real quick that the opinions I've expressed here in the debate are my opinions. Outside of this, this isn't an act for me. This is this is who I am. This is what I actually express.
Awesome.
Yeah, same with me. I like the quote that if you're playing a role, you'll forget your lines. And to reference Martin's question one more time and tie it back into modern science, Jungian psychology believes in archetypes, right? That there is a collective consciousness and a collective unconsciousness that would affect both our waking life and the dream world. So in my opinion, the closer we can get to merging those realities, the Eastern and Western cultures, and verifying each other's experiences, whether subjective or objective, the better we can understand one another. Thank you.
Thank you for answering.
Yeah, totally. I just want to respond. Yeah, both. That's really fascinating because it's like merging, some fields of like the anthropology as well as the neuroscience and those kind of merging of spirituality and science and tradition. And yeah, it's really a fascinating time that we have the tools to do a lot of this.
Thank you, Martin, for coming on.
What a time to be live, for sure.
Yes. We also have a couple questions in the chat that I want to get to since we're coming to the end of our stream today. There are two in here. Well, actually, there's three now. So I'm going to put Martin in the stage so that I can show the questions. I'm going to show them in the order that they came up. And so I'm going to give you guys a timer if we go on too long. First question is, how do you find a technique that will work good for you? Nightowl, would you like to go first?
You practice. And I prefer the term practice because so many people try a technique and they're either not doing it correctly or with the proper mindset, which is so big in this field. Mindset is arguably everything. That they become discouraged and give up. If I were to tie it back into reality checks, just doing any quantity of reality checks will not achieve lucidity. It's in the process that you raise your awareness, right? So in order to find out what reality checks work for you, I encourage you to experiment with different kinds, do your research, try, really feel what it's like and imagine the possibilities as you're doing it. Don't rush, take your time, really consider the fact that you might be dreaming, and don't take my word for it. Try it out and see what happens. And if you're not being successful with that technique or any others for that matter, then give it some time. Maybe a month would be substantial. I'm sure we can, debate that as well, but document what you're doing also. That's why I like dream journals with reality checks, because as Skyfall mentioned, there was a logbook implemented in the ASPE study, which sort of verified the subjective experience that person was having, made sure they had access to the same information. And essentially everybody should have that sort of tool on their person that enables them to know what they've been doing, how long, how frequently, and measuring all those, quantifiables that can lead to a different result.
Great. Thank you. Ryan, would you like to answer this question?
I would. For me, I'm a big fan of the C word. And the C word here is consistency. Decide on a routine, practice that routine consistently for at least a month, and experiment. Try to figure out what's going to work for you. And this is some advice I got from Sensei. When you do find something that works, spam it. The more you do something that works for you, the more you'll get lucid. I'm a big fan of devising a consistent practice and not switching techniques frequently. This is skill training. It would be like if you were to try to practice 7 different sports a week instead of devoting all your time and energy to practicing one. If you try to practice a whole bunch, you're not going to get that good at any of them. But if you practice one of them a lot, you can get pretty good at it. And so if you're trying to determine if something's effective for you, then there needs to be some time and some effort put into it to determine if it's actually effective. It's basically been my position on that forever, basically.
Yep, that is a great answer as well. So our next question is, it seems Nightowl has added so many additional aspects to what he's calling reality checks. Is it still a reality check at this point, or is it more of a personal custom practice? Nightowl, I will let you answer for yourself.
Yeah, great question. Thank you for asking. Seems Nightowl has added so many additional aspects to what he's calling reality checks. Is it still an reality check at this point, or is it more of a personal custom practice? Everybody's practice should be customized, personalized, and made your own. If you don't like what I had to say, try something different for sure. But my entire motivation with my participation in this debate and the work I pour into this field is to share what works for me, to learn what works for others, and to hopefully help someone else along the way. And it's really as simple as that.
Thank you. Ryan, do you have any points on this question?
Well, basically, yeah. A state test isn't like a specific thing. It's a way in which you can use anything as a state test. Honestly, I like the mental state test a little bit better than the physical ones, but you can use anything. And so it's not like the whole point of a critical state test is to be asking those critical questions. And honestly, the way he's describing it is a form of state test practicing. And I'll just leave it there because it was aimed at him. But yeah, basically.
Awesome.
Thank you, Ryan.
So we have one more question. How do I find an anchor? This is a wild related question, so it's not even reality check related, but if you guys want to answer it, how do we find an anchor that works good with me for wild? Any general tips for wild?
I think I'll start with. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll start with this one. So basically, this is something that's kind of really subjective and really, we're talking about variability and finding a practice that works for you. And honestly, there is no place where that is more apparent and more necessary than wild, because the types of anchors that you can use for wild are really endless in terms of you can use anything you can even imagine or conceptualize or think of. And so it is really versatile. It is really, flexible and subjective in that sense that you can kind of make your own even. And so honestly, experiment a bit. Like I said, when we talk about practicing a technique consistently for like a month or so, first determine, okay, how long does it normally take you to fall asleep? How quickly or how easily do you fall asleep? If you fall asleep quickly, maybe you want something that you need to pay more attention to stay aware of it. If it takes you longer to fall asleep, maybe you don't stay awake as long when you wake up during the night. Maybe you try to find something that is less demanding in terms of the amount of attention you pay. Remember that at the end of the day, you still need to fall asleep. And so intensely focusing on something for most people actually inhibits that process. So at the end of the day, the amount of awareness that is required can really vary and fluctuate, not only from person to person, from night to night, from time of the night that you're sleeping, etc. So really finding the right balance is something that's going to take some experimentation on each individual's part. It isn't a question that I can really answer for you, because that's something that you're going to have to determine for yourself.
Awesome. Yes, that is very true. So I love the answers you guys both gave. As of right now, I don't see any more comments in the chat currently, but I do have some statements for me that I want to say.
You skipped over Nightowl, by the way.
Oh, sorry, Nightowl.
Didn't
I thought
respond to
you
that one.
answered.
I was hoping it would skip over me. I'm going to handle this by saying it's equally as if not more important to know what you know is what you don't. And for me, wild is not something I have a lot of experience with that I can feel comfortable speaking to. So in this instance, I'll reference the fact that the majority of lucid dreams, statistically speaking, are diodes, dream-induced lucid dreams. Experiment what works for you. Wild is definitely an option. However, I will also add that wilds are more likely to succeed later in the evening after some core amount of sleep. It's much harder to anchor yourself and transition from consciousness to lucidity if you try to do it as soon as you lay down for rest. So maybe focus more on your intention at the beginning, and anchoring can be something you do later in the evening, coupled with a wake back to bed. Again, combined techniques are the best.
And then don't forget afternoon naps and dream initiated. But yeah, don't forget afternoon naps.
Oh
Naps are
yeah,
great.
naps.
Or morning naps. Naps are
Yeah,
great.
that's a great one.
Yeah, and really quickly on the wild topic, I also kind of try to do the SSILD, SILD, however you say it, kind of as like a combination anchor method. So like using your different senses as you go through wild. That's what I have personally found experience with. I speak by my experience, although statistics are important. So this has been really great. It's funny to me because it seems like we came here for a debate. But from my personal perspective, it seems like we're generally on the same page. It just gets down to nuances of terminology and how to present this um, mindfulness practice essentially to lucid dreamers, especially beginner people who are still getting familiar with the terminology and how everything works and how it's presented online. So, I know we're supposed to vote and pick a winner. The voting is going to go on for another week. But I personally cannot say that I'm on one side or the other because I agree with both sides. I've even starting to try to call it critical state tests sometimes, although I will use them both interchangeably because I think they're both important. And I am on both sides. I am taking a Switzerland status because I do see the value in what both of you guys are saying. And I do think there needs to be more evidence in terms of this because, as we know, one or two studies does not state a fact. So I think this has been great, though. And now it's time for closing statements. Night Owl, would you like to go first?
I wish I could go last, but I did start first, so it's only fair. Let me just finish by saying thank you all for joining us. This is our first debate amongst the Lucid Deep Dive series, and I had a lot of fun, not only joining you two here today and all of our guests. Martin, thank you so much for coming on stage. Somebody commented and said that guy with the zebra pants needs to have his own show. I think they're a little confused. I don't know if you have zebra pants on, but I think it's a zebra shirt. But
I think
yeah,
they're
they
talking
definitely
about
loved.
Martin. Yeah.
Yeah, they loved what you had to say. And please, if you have a place they can find you on social media, feel free to drop that in the comments. We're all about uplifting each other in this community. So yeah, thank you so much for coming by. And again, I had so much fun just preparing for this. Skyfall, I respect you so much and your opinion. You've taught me a lot about this field and you've helped so many people. So just in preparing for this debate, I took it very seriously. I did my research. I touched base with people who know so much more than me and have learned a lot through this process. So I'm hoping we can continue this format, refine it over time, and make it better. But as far as my closing statement goes, I'll just list out off the points I mentioned earlier. So there's 5 of them, right? So what a perfect metaphor for state test. And I'll look at my hand while I do this. Reality checks are the most commonly known technique according to Stumfrey's meta-analysis. Reality checks offer versatility and adaptability in lucid dreaming induction. Empirical research supports the efficacy of reality checks in promoting lucid dreaming. Mindfulness shares similarities with lucid dreaming, specifically reality checks, and can enhance the induction when combined with this method. Number 5, grounding techniques such as reality checks, tests, critical state questions can help avoid dangerous dissociation during lucid dreaming. So these points highlight the reality checks in the practice of lucid dreaming. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ryan.
I just want to start by thanking everyone who showed up tonight. Green, I know I pushed your bedtime back a bit, but thank you so much for showing up. I'm not sure which country you're from, but I do hope to learn that later. And yes, we do plan to do more of these in the future. This is fun. This format was engaging. I love it. Let's do more of these. And you're a great moderator, Amina. Now, to my closing points, again, I don't see state tests as a critical practice. Like, yes, they're a critical practice in how you do them, but they're not a critical practice in terms like you have to do them or that they are necessary. And so they're one of those things that they can be helpful. There is some good that can come of using them. And then I've also seen the other side of when you overuse them and what that could do, because I've seen what it did to me and what it's done to my own practice. And it's why I really haven't used state tests at all for basically the most part of over the past 3 years, is because I've seen what they've done what they did to my practice and how they kind of slowed me down because I was over confirming and I was losing confidence. And I think that while dissociation can be a problem for some people who have like dissociative symptoms, I think lucid dreaming on the whole can help the average person be more conscious of when they're awake and when they're dreaming, especially when you're noticing your awakenings and you're tracking when you wake up. It's a lot easier to kind of, I think, ground that idea of, oh, I just woke up. Therefore, what I was just experiencing is a dream. And it ties into your memory and being able to remember things. And this kind of thing that will vary from person to person, I think. But honestly, state tests, just like training wheels on a bike, they can be useful. They have a use. But are they effective just as a standalone technique? The evidence is mixed. There is enough evidence to say that they aren't effective as a standalone technique that I would never advise them as such. And I would always advise people to have a routine. If you include state tests as part of that routine, great. But don't just rely on state tests to get lucid. They can be a confirmation measure. They can help you answer that question when you're questioning, but they shouldn't be the only thing in your toolbox. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody. I do look forward to doing this again and hope you all have a good day, good evening, good morning, wherever in the world you just happen to be.
And before we go, may I motion to take a vote with whoever is willing to put their opinion out there. I stopped, calling Amina judge because she said she wasn't going to vote. So anybody else who wants to vote, please know you're a beautiful person and I appreciate your perspective. No, I'm just kidding.
I can be
Honestly,
a neutral judge.
you can. No, and I appreciate that. You did a great job, truly.
Mhm.
And I appreciate the singing song bowl reminders for our time. That was actually really effective for me. But
very
yes,
useful.
whoever's in the audience, please, Martin, if you're the only one who votes, Crystal, I know you're here too. Somebody drop in the comments what their votes are. We're going to take a quick tally now. If anybody dares to share who they think had the stronger argument, really, the question is, are reality checks or critical state tests effective in lucid dreaming practice? We both agree, guys. We both agree that combined methods, find out what works for you. But should we include them in our practice or not? Vote now or forever hold your peace.
Or should they be required? I think.
Should they be
Could be a
required?
better
Sure. That is a better question because I think they should be.
Well,
Skyfall doesn't.
That's hard. That's hard. Then that, like, if we're voting on that, like, all of these give me different answers because I wouldn't even say that it should be required for everything as a blanket statement because everybody's so different and I stand by that. So that's a hard one. Are they required or not? I guess we'll see what the people say. I personally still am having a hard time voting because I don't think it's the reality check itself or the state test itself, but it's that mindfulness practice behind it. And there's many different ways to incorporate that mindfulness practice into your day. So that being said, keep putting your votes in the comments and be sure to follow us, the Lucid Dream Initiative. We have our own YouTube channel that we're trying to grow, and you can also check out our website. We have a newsletter coming out, so check it out.
Yep, and if you guys go to the Lucid Dreaming Initiative YouTube channel, you can check out the website there as well. Definitely recommend doing that. And getting onto our newsletter, we have it coming out in the end of February on the 29th, and so definitely please come check it out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great.
So since a lot of people are like me in between and cannot vote for a specific side, I guess that concludes our debate today. And we will also be doing more lucid deep dives with different debate topics. And as Crystal mentioned in our private chat, we'll have different things regarding lucidity and what that means. So stay tuned for our next one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.